My name is Kylie Jensen, and I'm going to talk to you today on the topic of otherization and identity. The book Intercultural Communication by Holliday, Hyde and Coleman formed the basis of my explorations on the topic, and I will refer to the ideas presented in their work throughout this presentation. This presentation is entitled I Am the Foreign Other, Identity and Australian Expatriates in the United Kingdom, and it draws heavily on my own experiences as an Australian living in London. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge that this meeting is being held in part on Aboriginal land, and I recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal people in this land. As a representative of Curtin University, I am proud to honour the Nyungar people, and I value this place of shared learning. I recognise the historical impact of the past, and as an active participant in reconciliation, I am committed to strengthening an equal partnership that will honour the past, present and future. Holliday, Hyde and Coleman discussed the idea that as individuals, much of our identity is determined by the social structures, economic realities, mass media and culture intrinsic to our daily lives, and that despite this, we do possess certain freedoms to evolve our individual identities. This interpretation of the reading aims to explore the experiences of an Australian expatriate living in the United Kingdom, provide examples of Australian identity in popular culture, and discuss how an individual identity national to Australia evolves as a result of being the foreign other in the United Kingdom. Intercultural communication discusses the concept of the foreign other and the us and them perceptions of otherization. The foreign other is defined as not only individuals from foreign nationalities, but also individuals perceived as different. The accent, language use and natural behaviours of an Australian in Britain immediately identifies that they are different, that they are Australian and not British, that they are one of the them and not one of the us, that they are the foreign other. It is noted that those with stereotypical and culturist attitudes consider that even if the foreign other successfully integrates into a new culture, it is because they have become less like them and more like us and have left any negative essentialist traits behind. It is the suggestion of this presentation that this otherization regularly occurs when the foreign other is not entirely foreign, and that it is indeed present for those transitioning from one westernized country to another. Despite surface similarities, an Australian emigrating to Britain arrives having established their identity, surrounded by social and cultural discourses differing greatly to that of the British. Throughout the process of integration, an Australian expatriate makes many conscious and unconscious decisions regarding how much of themselves they keep and how much they lose. Are the essentialists right? As an expatriate develops a situated identity in the UK, do they lose their Australianness? Do they become more British and less Australian? Much work has been done by scholars and historians in regards to Australia's national identity. It is claimed in an article by Brian Fletcher in the Journal of the Royal Australian Historical Society that Australia is progressing through the development of a new sense of identity, in keeping with its status as a post-colonial power. Since the move away from identifying Australia as merely a British outpost, in the late 60s and 70s, the introduction of Australia's own history study, replacing that of the British in schools and universities, meant that our own national history is encouraging the process through which our national identity will evolve. I suggest that as a nation we define ourselves in other ways, through character more so than history. The Australian national identity is, of course, uniquely interpreted by each individual Australian. However, the casual nature of everyday life, being easygoing and possessing a distinctive type of humour are noted aspects of the Australian culture. In my own example, I consider that the nature of the Australian culture and my own experiences within Australia have both shaped my identity as one notably Australian. I possess many qualities of the Australian stereotype, an accent, a love for the outdoors, a relaxed attitude and an open character. However, relocating to a new country results in an individual becoming more aware of the negative aspects of stereotyping, and whilst I was happy to own and recognise the positive traits of my Australianness as the foreign other in the United Kingdom, in many regards I felt the need to overcome reductive and essentialist preconceptions concerning my own identity. Representations of Australia in the media are a common source of frustration for Australian expatriates, and references to these play a large part in initial interactions between the Australian expat and the people they meet on their travels. In social situations of my own experience, I am regularly asked by new acquaintances to quote Crocodile Dundee in my funny Australian accent. I've been asked over and over again if I ever met the crocodile hunter, and I am constantly having to explain that no, I am not named after Kylie Minogue. That these presumptions are repeated confirms to me that the Australian stereotype is alive and well in Britain. And it's not just television and movies. The internet has become an important source of information for consumers in the digital landscape. As you can see here, a simple search for the question, "Do Australians ride kangaroos?" returns an alarming number of results. 3,200,000 results to be exact, and this suggests that the misconceptions of the Australian identity are widespread. Here, we have an example of the Australian female stereotype, and from this it is easy to understand why some expatriates, either consciously or unconsciously, evolve their identity to separate themselves from this negative and reductive interpretation of the Australian character. An example of the masculine Australian stereotype in popular media can be found in the video on the next slide, where you will see a commercial from a successful UK campaign to promote Foster's beer, a previously Australian product.
G'day.
Dan, I'm at this fancy English barbecue. They're serving gold.
Oh, the Australian for chic.
But all the sangers have just got greenery in them.
No sausage.
Nah, just cucumber.
That is a crime against sliced bread.
Should I refuse to eat it on the grounds that I'm Australian? And a man?
No, mate. Obviously times are tough and they can't afford the beef. So eat the rabbit food and smile while you're doing it.
Righto. I'll give it a nudge.
Hooroo!
Hello, Bradley. You enjoying my little party?
Too right. And your secret's safe with me. Spend all the sandwich money on gold, eh? You little ripper.
Foster's Gold, 4.8% premium lager.
So, who are we when we're not at home? If we're not these stereotypes, if we're not these representations in the media, who are we? I consider that it is natural that when confronted with incorrect interpretations of character, an individual chooses to alter their discourse in order to assimilate, and so that their discourse better reflects the way that they view themselves. Holiday, Hyde and Coleman refer to this as a situated identity, and define it as being the different identities or social positions we enact and recognise in different settings. In my own experience, I have noted evolutions in my identity. I've stopped using slang and started pronouncing my consonant sounds, in order to avoid beginning each new interaction with a mockery of my accent and a fight against the Australian stereotype. In order to be seen as more than the stereotype, I've begun to present myself in social situations in a more intellectual manner, losing some of the informality of my Australian identity and allowing me to better meet the standards enacted by the participants in my new environment. For an expatriate, there is an old you and a new you. Travelling exposes the traveller to a world of discourses, and to be changed by the experience is natural. For myself, it is unknown whether the changes in my identity are permanent, though I suspect that noted differences in one's discourse merely reflect the differences in their cultural surroundings. An Australian expatriate in the United Kingdom is perceived as different. They are different. They are Australian. They arrive as the foreign other. The question here, though, is who do they then become? I suggest that an Australian expatriate in the United Kingdom evolves into an individual that is neither one of the us nor one of the them. Rather, that when an individual's national cultural identity and their situated identity collide, it results in a new personal identity that is inclusive of both discourses. Thank you for listening.